If we want to turn over to John chapter 1, our lesson this afternoon will be coming from that section. In the first chapter of the book of John, it is revealed that the Word, or the great eternal one, became flesh. It says that he dwelt among men. And when we read further in the book of John, we see that this great eternal one testified of himself as to who he was. There were people that heard him and saw what he did, who also bore witness regarding him. One such person that we see that does this in the book of John is a disciple and later an apostle named Nathanael. Starting this afternoon and ending next week, we are going to do a two-part study to examine this man Nathanael and see some of the lessons that we can learn from him. So let's turn to John chapter 1, and we're going to start reading in verse 43. The following day, Jesus wanted to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." And Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered and said to him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered and said to him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered and said to him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Most assuredly, I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." So we read this section of Scripture, and we get the first glimpse of Nathanael. So let's start looking a little bit at Nathanael. First of all, let's examine him closely at first, who Nathanael is. His name Nathanael means God is giver, or the gift of God, is what that name means. In Hebrew names, if you see L at the end, as in Nathanael, it means God in every case. So Israel means God strives. Whereas like here with Nathanael is gift of God. Nathanael is the Hebrew word. The Greek word is Theodore. And Theodore is the same word, gift of God. And so we know Nathanael will live up to his name. It is thought by scholars that Nathanael also had the name Bartholomew and is so listed in other places after Philip in the list that we see in Matthew chapter 10, Mark chapter 3, and Luke chapter 6. So we see this man, the gift of God is his name, and we see that he follows Christ and he comes to him. So the second thing that we want to look at, verses 47 through 50, we see Jesus commends Nathanael here. Can you imagine standing there that day and having Jesus say something good about you? You haven't met this man yet, and he says something good about you. Can we imagine standing before Jesus Christ and having him say something good about us? Think about on that judgment day when we are standing before Christ, that we want him to say something good about us. We want Jesus to say something great about us in that day. Matthew 25:21, his Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord." On that day, Jesus' commendation will be the only thing that will matter. When the Lord was on the earth, he not only commended individuals, he often rebuked them as well. But we see here that he commends Nathanael for what he does. He commends him for the things that he does. As preachers and teachers of the word, we have to find balance in that kind of thing. We know that we are commanded to rebuke. And by far, that is the hardest thing to do. 2 Timothy 4 verse 2, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, convince, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and teaching. 2 Timothy 5 verse 20, those who are sinning rebuke in the presence of all, that the rest also may fear. We rebuke, and we know we have to do that, but we also have to commend people. And commending is easy. People want to commend people all the time. They want to tell them how great they're doing. They want to tell them how wonderful things are. Think about Job. And we have to be careful not to use flattery. Job 32, verses 21 and 22. Let me not, I pray, show partiality to anyone, nor let me flatter any man, for I do not know how to flatter, else my Maker would soon take me away. We have to find that line. We have to be able to commend people and tell them they're doing good, but not tell them that they're doing more than they're doing. We live in a world where everybody wants to feel good all the time. We commend people and we make up awards for things that don't even need an award, right? We got to give everybody a big participation trophy and a big medal because we got to tell everybody how good they're doing, even if they don't give any effort. We got to a point in our schools at times to where everybody had to pass. There were kids you couldn't fail. And we had to keep them going and make them pass, even though they didn't deserve to. You had kids that didn't turn in 1 ounce of work, and they still passed the class because they couldn't fail them. We have had these years and generations of people that have had everything handed to them and have been told how good and wonderful they're doing. And now what do they think when they've gotten to the working age and they're not working and they're not contributing and they're not doing anything and they want to be told, I'm doing fine, I'm doing good. God tells us we have to do both. We have to find that fine line. And as a preacher and a teacher, that's hard to do. Because you've got to find the line between rebuke and the line between we're doing good. And we've got to recognize what we're doing well, but also recognize what we're not. Nathanael here is commended for the job that he's doing and what he's doing. Number 3, Nathanael is part of what we would say here, using the term, a few good men. Jesus was on earth. He was looking for a few good men. He was looking for a few good men that could go and could preach the gospel and could take the gospel to the world. A few good men, that phrase comes from a time when military recruiters went a lot and went to high schools and really tried to recruit kids out of high school. So there's a story that goes that there were 3 military recruiters, and they were given the opportunity to come to a high school and to talk to the seniors. And each recruiter, there was one representing the Army, one the Navy, and one the Marines, and they were each given 15 minutes to speak. The Army and Navy recruiters got carried away, and they spoke a lot longer than they should have. So when it came time for the Marine to get up, there were only 2 minutes left in the time that they had allotted. The other 2 had taken up all the time. So the Marine gets up and he walks to the podium and he says, "The Marines are looking for a few good men. I doubt whether any of you in this room could hack it in the Marines. But if there are a few good men here, I want to see you in the dining hall when we are dismissed." Then he sat down and took his seat. Well, later, when he arrived in the dining hall, he was greeted by a whole lot of students that were interested in becoming a Marine. Likewise, Jesus appeals to that heroic dimension in our heart. That Marine recruiter got up and challenged them, right? He said, "I'm looking for a few good men, and I doubt any of you can hack it." He gave them a challenge, and people wanted that challenge. They wanted to face that challenge and do better. Jesus gives us the same thing when he came. He's looking for those of us in our hearts are wanting to do more for him. We're wanting to deny ourselves. We're wanting to take up what he has asked us to do, and he wants us to move forward with that and do it in the world. Jesus wanted a very special kind of man to be his apostle. His choice was very serious to him, and Nathanael ended up being one of those men. Nathanael wasn't necessarily looking for Jesus, but Jesus was looking for him. Nathanael was minding his own business, so to speak, when Philip comes and taps him on the shoulder and says, "Guess what?" Philip, along with Andrew and Peter, had made that great discovery. Think about here that centuries, for many, many years, the Jews had been looking forward to the Messiah coming. This Messiah who would come and who would, and God chose this specific time in history. We know even the Samaritans were looking for the Messiah in John 4, verse 25, when he talks to the woman at the well. She's even looking for the Messiah. So think of the excitement of these men who made this discovery that Jesus was the Messiah. Think about the excitement when Columbus discovered what he discovered. Think about when Lewis and Clark discovered the immense acreage of the Northwest Territory. Think about the excitement when electricity was first introduced. Think about the excitement when a lot of the medicines that we have were introduced and they worked and functioned as they thought they would. Think of that excitement. We send people to discover all of these different things, but no other discovery in history in any way compares to the one we just read about in this text. Philip and Nathanael had made the greatest discovery of all. They had discovered the Christ. And they made the right decision to latch on and to follow him. We see in John 1, verse 45, Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We found this person." And he's appealing to the Scripture. He's looking back in the Scripture to tell who it is they're looking for. Moses and the prophets had written of the coming Messiah. Philip refers to these Scriptures and identifies Jesus of Nazareth as the fulfillment. Acts chapter 17, verses 1 through 3, Paul does the same thing when he's preaching. He says, when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue. And Paul, as his custom was, went into them and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise from the dead, and saying, "This Jesus whom I preach to you is the Christ." To help people discover Jesus, we can't grab them by the hand and take them overseas and show them places that Jesus walked and walk them through all those type of things, but we can walk them through Scripture. We can show them the Scriptures, the Old Testament and the New Testament Scriptures, and show them who Jesus is. They will find Jesus the way we did, studying the Scriptures. Through our preaching and our teaching, people will discover Christ. And that's what we see of Nathanael. He becomes one of those men. Philip says it's Jesus of Nazareth. I know this is who the Messiah is. Well, then look at Nathanael's reply in verse 46. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathanael may have had in mind the kind of thing that we often do today. You have a town, and people will say, "Well, that's the last place I would move to. That's the last place I would raise my family in. Nothing good could come from that place." That could be one way of looking at it. The other way is that Nathanael was a God-fearing man, and he knew what the Scriptures taught. And it may have been the Messiah from Nazareth. Scripture doesn't talk about that. Bethlehem was the place of the birth. We see that in Scripture. But I don't know anything about Nazareth. I don't know anything about these vantage points. And it could mean either one of those things, but the thought is the same. Like, wait, what? That's like us, saying, I won't go there. I'd probably offend somebody if I mentioned a town and said, could anything good come out of there? But we all understand the concept, right? We have thoughts in our head about where people of certain rank or priority or things like that come from, what their background is. Nazareth was not a wealthy city. Nazareth was not a prominent city. Nazareth didn't have a position of any kind of power in the area. Why would anything come out of Nazareth? You would think of somebody being raised up and coming out of Jerusalem or coming out of one of the big cities. Why would anything come from Nazareth? He's skeptical. But it didn't discourage Philip. Philip continues and brings him. We can't get discouraged. People may be skeptical when we first bring them the gospel. We can't get discouraged. We've got to keep going. You know, people are skeptical about TV evangelists. It would be good if they were also skeptical about a lot of preachers or the men they call pastors. Be better if we were skeptical about some of these people. You know, in the book, The Day America Told the Truth, by James Patterson and Peter Kim, it's reported that when a national survey asked respondents to rank various professions for their honesty and integrity, TV evangelists came out at the very bottom, below lawyers, politicians, and car salesmen. Out of the 73 occupations compared in the integrity rating, only 2 ended up lower on the scale than TV evangelists: crime bosses and drug dealers. What does that tell you? But that's also the face of what people see when it comes to religion a lot of times. They see people that are not trustworthy, people that are out to get their money. You know, we can't believe everything we hear. We can't become gullible. 1 John 4:1, Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. We are taught to have a healthy dose of skepticism, and people will do that, but we have to be persistent. Just like Nathanael here is a little bit skeptic. He's a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to Jesus. But we need to make sure that we listen and follow. We've got to search things out. We've got to make sure that what it is right. You know, if it's truly from God, we need to believe it and follow it. On the other hand, if it comes from any other source, we need to reject it. So you've got Nathanael, who means gift from God. And you see him approached, and he listens. He's skeptical because it doesn't fit what he's got made up in his mind. But he goes and he listens, and we know that he ultimately becomes one of Jesus' followers. When we look at Nathanael, Philip invites Nathanael to come and see. Nathanael takes the time to come and see. We have to investigate. We have to listen. We have to make sure that what is being said is right or wrong. You know, anything that we hear, whether I teach it, whether anybody else stands up here and teaches it, we've got to be willing to investigate. And we've got to be willing to listen. I've been wrong once or twice. I will probably continue to be wrong once or twice. Just once or twice. But when I am, I sure hope that you guys point it out too. We need to be like Nathanael. When we look at him from these first examples, we see a man who is seeking truth. He's seeking what's right. He's seeking what's best to help himself in his life. He seeks it out. He listens. He trusts his friend. Do we trust our friends? Those that are truly out to get the best for us, do we trust them? Do we listen? Do we pay attention? And then do we weigh what we hear and make our decision? That's all we're going to study about Nathanael this week. Next week, we're going to look a little more in depth into him. We're going to look at some lessons we can learn from some things we see about Nathanael in the subsequent verses of this chapter. What a great man to look at as an example. And what a few lessons we've gotten just out of about 3 or 4 verses here. Bible gives us great lessons and great information. You know, we all know the big passages, the passages that we have memorized. But you look at a section of Scripture here that talks about 2 men that a lot of people would glaze over and read quickly, and look at the lessons we can get out of it. We always need to be studying and looking for new things to learn. If there's anything we can help you with this afternoon, please come as we stand and sing.